I'm Shauna Rappaport here at GreenBiz 17 in Phoenix, Arizona, and I am joined today by Lucy Nottingham, who is the Director of the Global Risk Center at Marsh McLennan & Company. Thank you so much for joining us, Lucy.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about risk and sort of the evolution of why and how companies need to be approaching risk.
Well, I think in our view, what we're increasingly understanding is that companies need to spend more time thinking about how climate and environmental factors are going to affect the performance of the company. So it's no longer just thinking for the sustainability leaders to think about how is the company impacting the environment, but what is that environment and the climate going to be doing to the financial performance of the company in the near term, in the midterm, and the long term.
And through that climate lens, what are some of the primary risks that companies need to be thinking about?
Well, I think it's useful to take the framework of what you might call trip factors. So that's looking at how the technology evolutions that will be coming about with the transition to a low carbon economy. You might think the increase in e-vehicles, for example. You can think about the resource factors. That's a question of whether resources such as water may become more challenging, or agricultural products may be more challenging to access. You can think about the impact. That's the direct and indirect impact of extreme weather events. And then finally, policy. How will policy and regulatory changes that countries might make impact the performance of your company? So say, for example, a carbon tax. How would that impact the financial performance of your company? So I think if you start thinking about climate and environmental risk with that lens, you could start to see how the conversation quickly lends itself to a very business-focused conversation about your strategies and operations for your company.
Indeed, and this is a very expansive and complex landscape. Talk a little bit about the role of metrics and what are some of the key metrics and maybe tools for measuring them that companies need to be embracing.
Well, I think it's increasingly helpful as a company start to understand, how do these factors impact the financial performance, the performance of our company. You need to put it into metrics. And there's probably a couple of reasons why that's so important. One, a great story about sustainability is not going to be enough. You need metrics, because those metrics that are already in place and in use by the company, because that's the language by which people get it, and it will resonate. So if you can explain some of these risks and challenges and tie them into things that matter for the company, be it ROI, earnings per share, margins, and you explain the stories and the risks in those terms, then it resonates for the company, and it allows the company to start making decisions about those risks and the opportunities that could be associated with them in a real way to make the company more viable and thrive in a changing environment.
That's really helpful insights as you think about the sort of GreenBiz audience, which is a lot of chief sustainability directors, folks working in sustainability departments. What sort of advice would you offer or recommendations would you give about sort of where to start or with whom across other departments to prioritize building bridges for having and advancing these conversations?
Right. Well, I think one of the first things to know is what metrics matter for your company. Figure out what is a key story that makes your CFO or your chief executive officer or the head of supply chain, what makes them sit up and take notice? What do they need to explain and define to the board and other stakeholders? So know the metrics and know the ones that really drive decisions in your company. Then from that, know which ones you need to align with. What decisions do you want to influence? Is it capital allocation? Is it supply chain improvements? Is it process or operational improvements? And then figure out the metrics that align to that, and then align your story against that and make the decisions and go work with those individuals about how you want to improve or help them better risk manage those metrics, the challenges they might be facing, and use the metrics that you've identified.
Lucy Nottingham, Marsh McLennan & Companies. Thank you so much, Lucy.